Unit 4, Chapter 23 through Chapter 27. Chapter 23, Political Paralysis in the Gilded Age. The overarching theme for Chapter 23 is that the Republicans and Democrats fell into an era of do-little politics. Each was concerned only with getting their party re-elected. Number 1. President Ulysses S. Grant. Grant's administration was riddled with corruption. Grant himself was clean, but many others were not, and Grant was unwilling to fire them. Number 2. The political parties fell into the trap of serving themselves more than the people. Their top priority was getting their party re-elected. As a result, little actually got done in the government. Number 3. Tensions rose over race and ethnicity. When the U.S. Army pulled out of the South as part of the Compromise of 1877, Reconstruction was over, and Southern blacks were left to fend for themselves. Also, anti-Chinese sentiments ran high, and the Chinese were actually banned from immigration. Number 4. The government did reach the billion-dollar level for the first time. This was largely due to the military pensions plans. The plans were very popular and revealed the goal of legislators: pass something that will get me reelected. Number 5. Populism started. This was a farmer and worker movement that sought to clean up the government, bring it back to the people, and help the working man out. Chapter 24. Industry comes of age. The overarching theme for Chapter 24 is that America's economy turns from agriculture and handiwork to the industrial and machine work. There are 4 things that you have to remember for this chapter. Number 1. Before the Civil War, railroads had become important. After the war, railroads boomed and were critical to the nation. Railroads, along with steel, were to be the skeleton on which the nation's economy would be built. Number 2. A class of millionaires emerged for the first time ever. Tycoons like Carnegie and Rockefeller made fortunes. This type of wealth was championed by the social Darwinism, where the strong win in business. Number 3. Unfortunately, many of the mega industries, like railroads, grew at the expense of the little man's interest. As businesses, they were out to make money. And they did, but the working man cried foul. Number 4. To right these wrongs, the beginnings of antitrust to bust the monopolies and organized labor got a jump start, although they were still rather ineffective. Chapter 25. America moves to the city. The overarching theme for Chapter 25 is that in the late 1800s, the Industrial Revolution forced the American city to gain new dominance over rural America. There are 4 things that you have to remember for this chapter. Number 1. Cities grew because factories grew. The Industrial Revolution kicked into gear the America in the late 1800s, and factories needed workers, so people flocked to the cities. Problems arose as cities boomed. The problems included the exploitation of immigrant laborers, poor and unhealthy working conditions, overcrowdedness and sanitation problems, corruption, and nativism. Number 3. Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois were the top black leaders. They disagreed on how to help blacks. Washington encouraged blacks to obtain a practical skill at a trade school. Du Bois encouraged blacks to study anything they wished, even academic subjects. Number 4. The roles of women began to change, if only slightly. More women worked, though most were still at home. The new woman was idealized by the athletic, outgoing, quote, Gibson girl. Chapter 26. The Great West and the Agricultural Revolution. The overarching theme for Chapter 26 is that the West opened up for settlement. This meant that the Native Americans were first forced out for farmers, miners, and ranchers. There are 5 things that you have to remember for this chapter. Number 1. The Native Americans out west faced 2 options: agree to settle on reservation or fight the U.S. Army as hostiles. Some chose reservations, others to fight, but all were cleared out. Number 2. Miners were looking for silver and or gold, and they fled to Colorado and Nevada seeking quick fortune. A few found it, but the vast majority didn't. Number 3. Cattle became king in Texas as cowboys drove herds north to Kansas railroads and reaped quick money. Number 4. Farmers struggled out west due to several problems: weather, insects, high mortgage rates, high railroad shipping rates, and low prices for their crops. The farmers' struggles led to the People's or Populist Party. This party sought cheap money, or silver money, in order to create inflation and thus make it easier to pay off debts. Chapter 27. Empire and Expansion. The overarching theme for Chapter 27 is that America took over new lands, mostly in the Caribbean and the Pacific. There are 4 things that you have to remember for this chapter. Number 1. The Spanish-American War saw the U.S. gain Hawaii, Puerto Rico, Guantanamo Bay and Cuba, the Philippines, and other small islands. Number 2. The Philippines proved to be hard to handle since the Filipino people didn't want the U.S. there. They waged a guerrilla war and resented American control until it was turned back over to the Philippines after World War II. Number 3. The U.S. managed to get an open door policy with China. This opened the Asian giants to international trade. Number 4. Teddy Roosevelt became a vigorous president who obtained and built the Panama Canal. His, quote, big stick policy toward Latin America increased America's influence, but also increased the animosity toward the U.S.